Good morning. Let me do one thing real quick here. Um, I need to remove something from archives. Apparently, um, Facebook is really messing with me. Really, really messing. Um, Let me get this going here. Hang on one second. Hmm. Well, the unfortunate thing for YouTube, for Facebook, it won't be on. Unfortunately for Facebook, this is going to be an issue. Um, Give me a quick second, see if I can figure this out. Really, really, really hate with a passion the way Facebook does stuff. They are the most ridiculous when it comes to things here. Um, See if I can get this. I want to still want to try to do this, but it's looked like it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult. Yep. Yeah, this is going to be an issue. So sorry, Facebook, you're not going to be able to be on today. It's an unfortunate event, but man, yep. Um, I cannot change anything. This is so silly, so ridiculous, man. Anyway, I get so tired of them sometimes. I get so sick and tired of them. It is the absolute most disgusting way that they do stuff. It's not even that it doesn't make sense the way they do it. Um, what they have going on right now is that you have to adjust everything manually, but when you do it manually, it's a hit and miss issue to see whether or not it actually happens. It, my goodness. I don't want to not have Facebook up. I really don't. Caleb. So let me see if I can do this real quick. I need to see if I can manage this um, real quick, guys. Just hang on one second. It won't let me. Ooh, my word. Well, that's it for that. My apologies, guys. So if you're on Facebook and you're hoping to see this, I'm sorry. You have to go to YouTube to do it. Um, this is going to be one of those issues where we just can't help it. Um, all right. We'll get into it either way. Um, we have a discussion with the um, Charlie Kirk and a individual who steps forward to his mic during an event, a on campus kind of debate issue. You know how he does. And The person that steps forward was very respectful, which is good. It's abnormal, very abnormal. And the statements he makes are interesting to say the least. Interesting, very, very, very interesting to say the least. And so what we're going to do is break down the comments that the guy makes, and then breaks down what Charlie says too. The reason I wanted to address it was um, when we talk to people in the world and we try to explain to them something of God and um, try to get into debates about them with them about morality and what's right and what's wrong. I think we all too often forget what the Bible actually says. And I want to reiterate some things that the Bible says um, about the knowledge of God when it comes to people in general. Okay. And I think it's essential that we break this part off first before we go any further with the video itself. In Romans 1, okay, it says in 16, for I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Greek. For it is the righteousness of God for the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. As it is written, the just shall live by faith. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds, and four-footed animals, and creeping things. You know, with that statement being made, when people approach you and tell you things about God is this and you don't understand, God don't exist, and I keep telling you that it is 100% factually inaccurate what they're saying, a lot of them, all of them, know of the existence of God and are angry at the existence of God, which is why they spend so much time talking about something that doesn't exist, which is also why they could never get past their nose when it comes to trying to figure out what they think is morality. And that's why it's always changing, because just like any good old sin, you can't get enough of the same sin over and over, and you have to kind of like enhance it over time. That's why they keep moving the goalposts, because what was accepted before becomes too normal. And then you got to make it a little bit more aggressively disgusting. And then you keep going, which is why we're at where we're at now. It isn't that they don't know who he is, they don't want him. They have rejected him. They have 100% rejected him. Purposefully, directly, and equivocally, they have rejected God. So when we have these discussions with them, trying to convince them of something or talk to them about something, what you're really fighting is them fighting themselves to accept it as something they should do. Not know, not believe, do. Should I leave what I have and follow God. But I know what God's about, and He will require me to not do this. I'm not going to stop, and I'm not going to follow Him because I'd have to give that up. It's clear as day, clear as day. It's clearly seen and understood. And understood. Okay, so with that in mind,
the world is waking up to the power of gold. National Bank.
Hear about your commercials. Let's go past the commercials real quick here.
So much for coming here. I think it's really good that you come to campuses and talk to people who disagree with you. I also think it's like a testament, like you've like gotten a really big following, and it's a testament to the fact that capitalism works and merit-based societies work, that we can actually grow our influence. And yeah, so I agree with you with a lot of things, but I do disagree with you with like two or three particular points. And I hope to like go touch on all of them. Firstly, it's about morality and the fact that your claim that objective morality exists. I disagree with that. I think morality is relative for everyone or subjective, and it kind of like grows as with the culture and as the culture changes. So yeah, what are your thoughts about that, and how do you justify objective morality?
Now, in case you have a problem understanding his accent, okay? He believes in subjective morality as opposed to objective morality. The difference between the two is one can be switched off and on and advance or decline as the whims of people come on. An objective reality is one that is just is. There is no changing it. It is right and it is wrong, hard and fast. That's it. The reason objective reality can exist is because of an entity called God. Subjective reality can flip flop and go all over the place because of a thing called fickle man. The reason why people who don't love God gravitate to subjective morality is because it gives them the appearance that they know what is right and they can change it at any time they want to justify what they're doing at the time. Oddly enough, subjective reality always comes after they've done something. Majority of time they do it, the subjective morality, they've already accomplished what they want to do. They've done it, they like it, and then they try to justify it as being right. In some cases, they'll actually try to justify it in order for them to do it publicly. Kind of like what they're doing with the minor attracted people, the pedophiles. You make it, and we say they normalize it or they're grooming, but what they're really actually doing is trying to create a new social scale for that to be accepted as correct. Subjective morality. This is what they do. But it is not from the lack of knowing the rules and the what God is asking them. They know it, which is why they push against it so hard. It is by design that they do this. So really their questions are not really to get the answer. The question is to see if you really believe what you say you believe and try to convince you to do what they're doing. So let's see what Charlie's answer is.
Do you believe in absolute truth?
What do you mean by absolute truth?
Absolute truth, like that there is truth absolute for all people.
Yes,
You do. Okay, that's objective morality.
that's objective facts. I won't say that's morality.
And I agree with him. I agree with the guy, not with Charlie. That might be an objective fact, but that has zero to do with morality. You have to, this is the problem with trying to prove somebody about objective morality. And Charlie will get to this in a minute. But again, his approach, I'll show you where I disagree with him on.
Okay, so do I have permission to ask you a provocative question?
Sure.
Was
I know what you're gonna ask.
okay, fine. I mean, was Hitler objectively wrong?
No.
Okay, now hear me. He said Hitler was not objectively wrong. Why would he say that? Because his concept of objective truth and morality is different than Charlie's, because his base for what is objective is different than Charlie's. Where he is actually coming from is his objective reality. because he's already rejected an absolute in the person of God. Once you put that aside, anything can be placed in that objective spot. So whatever I deem as my core value belief structure will become my object from which I focus on everything. So if I am the object of my truth, I do have in some ways an objective reality, because for me, what you consider changing is not changing at all. I call it adaptation. And because I'm the arbiter of everything that's real and true and right, it's always objective reality. Just because your God doesn't change, this is what people will say, that's because your God doesn't change and he remains one specific way for your objective reality, does not mean that my objective reality, even though you might consider that even subjective because I'm the one making it so, you can't really tell me that that's your logic if I don't believe in God. However, if you take the Bible's approach, and the Bible says that everybody knows what they call objective reality is indeed subjective. But you can't explain that to most people like this guy, because in reality, they are the center of their universe. And they don't want to let that go.
So I do. So
What was the Holocaust objectively evil?
I want to like make a distinction between like my personal views that I do feel that it is wrong, but I can't say that it is like objectively wrong, because I don't believe that objective morality exists. Like, why can I ask you, like, why do you think objective morality exists, and how do you like ground that objective morality in?
Very good question. A very good question. Let's give the kid the most benefit of the doubt we can. Let's just say that he is in a position of, there is something out there, I just don't call it God. And let's say he believes that everybody has an innate viewpoint of right and wrong. So his question is, what do you get your grounding for your objective morality from? If it exists, how do you explain it? It's a very good question. Now we'll see if we'll see if it, and understand it, Joyce. Look, and this is the times that we're in. Mankind has thought to themselves that the more intellectual I sound, the more right I am. They found ways to define things that they can fight over, is really what happens. So what we kind of thought was right and wrong, which should have been natural to us, like I said, it has now become something different, because man will always try to justify the behaviors they have. Always will.
Well, first, of course, we believe that the Lord of the heavens and the earth gave us that objective reality through revelation.
Okay.
But secondly, we believe it's written on the heart of every human. You know, in Nuremberg, it's very interesting. When they did the Nuremberg trials, and the Nazis basically said, well, in our country it was right, therefore it's right. Do you know that in Nuremberg they rejected that? They said, no, every human being knows that killing 6 million, babies and kids is wrong.
While that may be true, remember, you're trying to convince somebody else of that truth. Setting laws and parameters and rules, good, awesome. But why do you think people keep breaking them? Why is it that for all the rules that we put down, for all the laws that there are, people still completely and utterly bypass them, ignore them, break them? And then after a while, they have people that get into power and change them. Why is that? Because we like chaos. We don't like somebody else telling us what to do. Now imagine having a entity trying to tell you what to do. You can't talk back to it. By the definition of this entity, there is nothing you can do about it. Its way is the only way. How would you feel if you had this idea in your head that you are the arbiter of truth? It's your life, you do what you want. How would you feel if someone came and told you, say, look, you might think that way, but there is a God that has a completely different set of rules and you have to follow him? do you think you'd be inclined to listen to that person? Even though in your mind you know that there is something, you just don't want to attribute to God, but there is something that will tell you when something is off. You'll call it intuition and you'll call it logic, and you have all these man-made terms for it, but you cannot explain why you have this within you. Someone tells you, well, the God gave you that. But the more you find out about this God, you're like, well, if all of this has to come with it, I'm not following him. I'll keep my image of what I am, and I'll keep changing my rules. This is why I say you can't fully convince anybody of anything. They have to come to the point where they say, you know what, my way, I don't want anymore. I'm going to give this up. And the convincing factor of it is not on you. That's a them and God thing.
And so do you think there's anything built into us of a moral compass that prevents us from doing evil and we have to try to stifle it?
I think there are moral intuitions that everyone has, but again, like those moral intuitions can differ from person to person, right? Like I might say that, like I don't know, like doing something is wrong, but like someone else might say, oh, it's fine in this situation. So like, how do you distinguish? Like, so it's obviously subjective, right? Like everyone might have their own opinions on what is right and what is wrong. So how do you
Yeah.
how do you make a framework that says that, like, these are the rules of what is right and what is wrong, and like how do you ground
The
that?
more important question is, do you believe in God? Which I
No. That's not the more important question. No. I would, and this is why I would much rather him answer the question and have the man come to the conclusion that he needs to believe in God to see things the way Charlie sees them. It is fairly obvious that the man does not believe in God. There is no way he can believe in God having the statement being made that he does not believe in objective morality. It is written right there, and you just want him to admit it, but I don't see that as being a beneficial part of the conversation. It is obvious he does not believe in God. My next statement to him would have been, well, I can't explain that to you. There is no way for me to make it make sense to you because you do not believe in God. My viewpoint, if you wanted to understand it, you can only understand it if you believed in God. It would only make sense if you believed in God. But I know you don't believe in God, otherwise you would share this particular point of view. It's really that simple. And I think we try to do too much. We try to go way too ahead into the intellectual battles to try and convince people of something that's innate to them. You just admitted that everybody has this right and wrong code written in them, right? That's what you said. Ironically, every culture seems to have something to do with God in their, history. And how do you deal with people, and the thing is, even tribes that are far off in the woods seem to have some sort of a spiritual aspect to them. Why is that? Because there is something genetically written into us that either longs for, knows already, or wants to know. It's there. It's completely there. But no, he doesn't believe in God.
I guess you do not.
I'm agnostic. Like,
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah.
that's where. Okay. So if you don't believe in this, actually, what's your name? Sorry.
Abhinav.
Yeah. Well, you're making a great argument,
Mhm.
and your argument is totally correct, which is that if you don't believe in God, then you cannot say that the Holocaust was wrong.
Mhm.
In order to
Technically, no. Technically, no. Technically, no. Because there are tons of so-called atheists, right, that do believe that the Holocaust was wrong. They don't believe in God. They believe that there might be a God. They can possibly come around to that. They don't want a God, but they can tell you that the Holocaust was wrong. And then there are some atheists that tell you the opposite. It was not wrong. That isn't a prerequisite for the right and wrongs of something very atrocious. Now ask them something a little bit more normal, like, is stealing wrong? Well, it depends on what you consider theft. Okay, do you consider premarital sex wrong? Of course not. I doubt you'll find a single atheist that tells you no, it's wrong. There are certain pockets of questionings that you can ask people. The Holocaust is one of the most extreme ones. And of course, the majority of people will tell you, no, it's wrong. For me, it's wrong. For Hitler, it wasn't. That's what they're always going to answer you because it's subjective to them.
To believe that, in order to believe something is objectively wrong, you must believe in God.
Untrue, Charlie. Completely untrue. That is one of the most ridiculous takes I have ever heard. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have to believe in God for something to be objectively true or wrong at all. There are myriads of things that people agree on without the topic of God being involved in it. So no, you don't have to. Because if you're saying that there is a code written into everybody, your own words, then the belief or disbelief in God is irrelevant to them having it. If it's innate to me, while I may not attribute it to God, I still have it. So which means there is a code written in me, but I don't have to believe in God for it to be right or wrong. No.
Because if you believe in God, then you believe that there's a transcendent moral order that is over all of us.
No. Even people who believe in God push something morally wrong, reprehensible even. For crying out loud, the Pope, even though you may not believe that they follow God, they at least believe in something called God. They profess to believe in God and still promote a lot of the things against God. That's morally wrong. At this point, you would have to define for me what your definition of belief in God is. What do you mean by you have to believe in God? That's what I would like the definition of. Is your belief in God a following of him or that he exists? Which one is it? Because if it's just that he exists, that's one thing. If it's a following because he's right, that's a whole nother thing. Demons believe. They still do what they do. They still do what they do. So my question then is still coming back to this. How can you tell somebody that in order to figure out something being right or wrong, they have to believe in God? No, they don't. Because they do understand that he exists and they know that he might be there, they still disobey. They still disobey. And they call it right. So no. That is objectively untrue, Charlie.
And you're proving that point, and it's not even a criticism. You are being consistent.
Okay.
And to your point, which is that so we believe that there is a God that has rules for life. We believe that was given to Moses primarily at Mount Sinai. Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, and that every society and every culture lives under that natural law. And so, but
that's not where it began, though. That factually is not where the moral code began. That's just where it was written down on tablets and handed through but it was there long before that. Like the rules of it and the whole thing written in heart was already there. That look at what happened with Cain. Look at what happened with Cain. It was there already before the Ten Commandments ever remotely came into being. I understand the need to want to convince people. I do. I really do. But have we ever thought that maybe not everybody will be convinced? Okay, we're going to talk candidly real quick. I'll take this down for just a second. Let's talk candidly real quick. Is or was Hitler right in what he did? There. Was Hitler right in what he did? That's the question. Anyone can answer that question. Was Hitler right in what he did? Anyone? Totally wrong. Killing is never right. No. Okay, and see, only one person. Now, what was my question? What was my question? Was Hitler right in what he did? The question is, was he right in what he did? What was the one thing I did not ask you? What was part of that question that never came to you, but you assumed it was? You assumed I'm asking what you think. Did I say, do you think Hitler was right in what he did? I said strictly, was Hitler right in what he did? And who would have determined that but Hitler? Now, me having my base in Christ and in objective reality, I would say, no, he was not right in what he did. But to Hitler, what else does the Bible say about that? Does the Bible address something like that? It does. It does suggest something like that. What does it say? There is a way that finish this sentence for me. There is a way that I'll wait to see if anybody finishes it for me. There is a way that I'm going to wait for the chats to see if they finish typing it up. If you can finish the sentence, there you go. There is a way that seemeth right to a man, but the end of it is destruction. The end of it, not the during, the end. God knows that. He doesn't stop them. Is he right for not stopping them? Is God right for not stopping man doing something that is killing them and seeming right to them, even though it's not? Is it objectively moral for God to not stop them? We're going to get into some really crazy philosophical stuff, okay? This will come down to what you believe of God. If he is the all-powerful and his will cannot be thwarted, then whatever he does, it's right. If, however, you do not believe that God is all-powerful, then you should be the one that should be in charge of your own life, and he can't get mad because he gave you free will. So here's my bigger question. Why do we try so hard to convince men that the free will God gave them ought not to be executed? Why do we feel we have to convince somebody to not execute their free will? And when I say that, I don't mean like not telling them. I'm talking about of the kind of things that Charlie and many other apologists do. It's always the constant barrage to people about it. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just simply asking if we know that mankind will have to eventually choose, why keep bombarding them with the same thing over and over? You know what could easily happen? They will follow simply to shut you up, or they'll say they'll follow just to shut you up. You'll see that come out here.
Very interesting that if we get away from the idea of a belief in God and the transcendent, you can see how dangerous that is for society, right?
No, I can't. I can't. Again, you are coming from a perspective that you believe there's a dead set right and wrong. What if the entire goal of that society, the end result, is chaos? What if the group that you're talking to all agree that each man for himself by any means, and that is perfectly fine with them? You would consider that chaos. They don't. So you can't agree that it's a bad thing. To you, it is. Yeah. They made a group decision. They're going to do it. Now, of course, we're talking about this as if God is an outside entity and does not affect us. We all obviously know that whether or not you choose or don't choose, the end result is still set in stone, and ain't no avoiding that. You just have to pick a side. That's all.
I wouldn't say it's dangerous because it really depends on what the morals the society adopts and like what their constitution is, what their values are. I don't know why that needs to be grounded in religion.
And there you go. Now, like when I told you, this particular guy has a very just like with any believer, he has a very solid foundation on which he stands, whether it's wrong to us or not. What he is coming from and where he is coming from, he is sold on. He is very sold on it. He said it doesn't need to be, he doesn't see the reason why it has to be based on religion. So let's see what Charlie says.
So let me ask, okay, so would you say that murder is bad? Yes?
Do you notice what he does not address? You see, me, I would have never, that's where I would have gotten him. That is where I would have easily got him. You know how? Satanism is a religion. Yeah. In fact, anything you hold in a position that you follow tooth and nail becomes your religion. He said he doesn't believe that it needs to be based on a foundation of religion. My question to him would be, what's religion? And when did I ever mention religion? I never mentioned religion, not a single time. That's what I would tell him. Not once did I say religion. I said belief in God. I said belief in God. I never said religion. But even for Charlie, religion is his belief in God. For me, right, this is what it is. Religion is not what makes your faith strong. Religion is something you do. You practice religion. Faith is not practicable. You have it or you don't. You can exercise it, not practice it.
I would say that.
By
yeah.
what standard do you measure bad?
I would say that like it's based on my environment, how I was raised, like what my cultural beliefs are,
Mm-hmm.
like how everyone else morality has influenced my morality. So it's like I believe that like for example, like I think you brought this up in some other debate that like some tribes might are okay with child sacrifice or
Yep.
cannibalism or things like that, right? So for them that is okay. For me, it's not, right?
And he's right. He's 100% right, though. that there are some people that just don't want to follow God. And by proxy, whatever they do, like the Bible says, is right to a man. Each one has to decide.
It really depends on what society we grow up in, I think.
Yeah. So child sacrifice is not something you think that is objectively wrong.
I'm just trying to understand how do I
Let's
ground
pay attention up here,
objective?
guys. Thanks.
How do we ground what is objective? And also you brought up a point that like if you do believe in God, then we do have objective morality, right? And you obviously believe in Christianity. But my point is like if, for example, a different religion has different morals, how do you determine which one is objective? Because both will think that it's objective, right? So how do you make that determination?
Yes, very good question. Wouldn't you think? Wouldn't you think that'd be the most obvious question? Okay, you're coming to me to tell me about God, the God. I just came from somebody that wants to talk about Buddha. And you tell me, don't listen to Buddha, listen to God. And I ask you, what makes God better than Buddha? Let's see what he says.
It's a great question. Well, first you have to look at there's just a sideshow going on here.
Then ignore it.
You have to look at the proof and the fruit of which that moral system has delivered.
No. That's you're measuring it against yours. Again, you can't do that. Charlie, look, Charlie, I agree. You got mad brains. You could remember facts and dates and stats and all. Big brain. Got it. Understood. But how are you going to convince somebody about the efficacy of one belief versus the other using your own? You have to use theirs to convince them. You have to use theirs, not yours. They obviously do not believe yours, or they would have never brought the question to you. What makes yours better than this person's over here? You have to look at what happens in society. Was right? No. Because if I'm looking at it, if I look at it, I have to now say, okay, well, that's wrong. And the person's going to tell me why. Well, because of my belief. But I'm not asking you about that. I'm asking you comparatively which one's right, why. Because now you have to tell me about what you believe. I don't want to find out what you believe. You're dealing with somebody that's not you, that's asking you to compare the two to convince them, which means I have to use their guide, not mine. So to look at that society and then say, well, we have to see how it works. No. The answer is this. I can't compare the two for you. It's not possible for me to do that. Because in your world, everything is subjective. I can tell you why I believe what I believe about morality in a society, and I can show you what they believe, and I can tell you what the difference is between them. But at the end of the day, you have to decide if what I believe and what they believe matches what you believe. Or if I can present you with something that may have you think about it. But to tell me that I have to now compare somebody else's belief structure against mine to convince somebody else, that's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Okay.
And so are you from India? I don't mean to.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm from Delhi.
Do you, can I ask you a provocative question? I don't mean to offend you by any way, but
Sure.
do you think that the moral system of India or the moral system of America, which is better?
What do you mean by moral system?
He gets him every time. You have to keep coming back with this definition of moral. You have to keep coming back to your definition of morality, Charlie. You keep imposing your view of morality on your question. I know what you're doing. You're hedging it so that you can get from him an answer that fits you. But if you just let it be open-ended, you might get somewhere further. If you had come upon somebody else that do believe in a caste system, positive and good, the answer would have told you is, yes, I like it. What would be your thought then? You would give him an example of why you thought it was bad to convince him that it's bad, but he's grown up believing it's right. And he's now adopted it as right. Your viewpoint will have no effect on him because he doesn't believe what you believe.
Like, can
Caste
you give me
system.
some? Yeah, I disagree with the caste system.
Got it. So you disagree with it, but is there something objectively evil and wrong with saying that 200 million people are permanently in poverty?
Again, I want to ask you, like, how do we ground objectivity? Like, what, like, for example, like, for scientific theories, like, we can, like, conduct experiments and say, okay, it's objectively true. But, like, for morality, like, it depends person to, like, for example, people living in India at that time,
Mhm.
for them it might have been okay, right?
Yeah.
So, like, how do we ground the objectivity? Like,
You have
Yeah.
you have to believe in God.
No, Charlie. No, Charlie. You can tell them this. I cannot convince you that objective morality is true. I can't. As long as you see objective morality as something ungroundable or groundable in anything I want, I cannot convince you of objective morality. As long as the argument stays between objective and subjective, you'll never get to the bottom of it because they can be interchanged. Someone can look at your idea of objective reality and call it subjective because you believe in God. Somebody can look at I can look at their subjective reality and they consider it an objective because that's what they believe. If you believe in God, you will automatically ascribe your morality to him. That's automatic. But there are people around that live good lives. Good lives. In their world, they're moral. Why do you think so many people genuinely don't think they're that bad? Why do you think that so many people don't think they're that bad? I'm not like that, and I'm not even in the Bible. Thank God I'm not like that guy over there. I pay my tithes and I do everything. I'm not that bad. Why do you think that is? Now, compared to God, are they good? No, they're not remotely good. They're not even remotely good. How many people do you think are going to come to the knowledge that they are nothing before the ever living God? Not very many. Morality is invalid compared to what you think of yourself before God. Until you see that, yes, I understand that. Yeah, now I'm undone. But that's if they come to that belief. Convincing somebody of morality by telling them they have to believe in God is kind of pointless, simply because they already do not believe in God and they have what they consider morals.
You have to
Okay.
believe in a power, more specifically a monotheistic one.
Untrue again, even. What you mean to say is that I believe in a this and a that, and that's where I get my idea of objective morality. You're asking me how I would do it. You're asking me what do I do? And I can tell you from the perspective I have, this is right. I have my reasons for believing it. Boom. You don't have to believe that. The only thing you need to figure out is why yours keeps changing and why mine stays the same. I'm not going to try to convince you that my way is the right way. I am convinced in my way. I am fully convinced that God is in charge of everything. I am fully convinced that he's in charge of morality and he can punish immorality himself. That's what I believe. If you want to believe like me, I can help you with that. but you don't have to believe like me. You will never have to believe like me. Nobody has to believe like me. I would love for you to have an objective reality based in Christ, but you don't have to. You can create your own rights and wrongs in your own world as often as you want and as long as you want, and change it as frequently as you want. Why? Because whether you believe it or not, you are following something objectively yourself. And as long as you are God in your own world, I cannot give you why my thing is grounded in objective reality based on God. I can't do it. That is how. That is how you tell them. There's no convincing somebody by telling them that this is the only way you have to believe. They have to decide that themselves. Even if you believe that, each one has to make up their minds, because otherwise they'll be following something you said. Their faith might be there, and they might be like the seeds that fall on the ground, on the concrete, and it breaks free, and and then it'll die. All the various types of seeds that fall. It's not like they don't know. The seed falls, some doesn't germinate, some do, some grow a little bit, it gets trampled, and various kinds. It's not my job to try and force the plant to grow. I'm just throwing seed out there. That's my only job, throw seed. But to try and pin them into a corner to make them believe something is almost like coercion. On the spot thing it's coercion.
Okay, why is that?
Well, because if you have many gods, polytheism, you have many moralities.
Mm-hmm.
Untrue again. You don't have many moralities. You can pick which one fits your level of morality. And I may not see yours as moral at all. And people might like that. Again, Charlie, you're going based on yours. And if you're trying to convince somebody else's of their ideas wrong, then you have to see it their way and have them reason out why theirs is right. You're already convinced of yours. And you know why you're convinced of yours. They're not even fully convinced of yours. So why are you trying to do that? Have them reason through theirs. Have them reason through theirs. Okay, you come up here. Hitler was right. Okay, Hitler was right. Let's go with, you don't think it's right. Okay, but people thought it was right. Why do you think people thought it was right? And he'll give me his answer as to why they thought it was right. So who gets to decide what happens to Hitler if he did something wrong by the other people's standards? The majority, right? Cool. So if the majority of the world says what he did was wrong, and the world decides to punish him for what he did, what happens when the world's compass moves further forward and they actually end up where Hitler was? What happens if the morality that's ever so shifting with all the people in the world decide that they're going to punish Hitler for what he did? Fast forward, say 100 years, they are now okay with what he thought. Do they punish themselves or apologize to Hitler? Now let him answer that question. Now let him answer that question, and then he can get to the bottom of what really is objective. Because if it is objective, it never changes, right? Okay, never changes. Now answer the question. Was what Hitler did wrong, so wrong that you had to punish him, and it will always be wrong? Or is it just wrong for then, and now we can do it because it's not wrong now? And if it's not wrong now, do you set up a whole different kind of thing to say Hitler was eventually right? I'm just trying to figure out what's your best answer for that one.
And one God, one morality. So that's why ethical monotheism founded America.
Here's the biggest problem with that, right? One God, one. The Muslims follow a God too. Just one. They follow one God. But they also believe in some things that Charlie would consider morally wrong, reprehensible even, right? But their God accepts it. It's only one God, though. Explain that one. It's just not your God. It's not our God, but it's their God, and it's one. It's not monotheistic. I mean, it is monotheistic. It's not dual, right? There's not 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. There's only one. It's not poly. They believe in one. But they have stuff within their religion that is absolutely reprehensible. I'm just trying to get the guy in, that's standing up to ask Charlie his answered questions. I'm trying to get his questions answered. This is my opinion about what Charlie did. He made a bunch of known Christian arguments to a person that does not have any of the background for those Christian arguments. It's not going to work. Simply not going to work.
And so, of course, it's a faith claim in some ways, but we can use science also to get us pretty close to believing in God, from space, time, and matter, from the teleological argument for God, for how all the fine tuning of our universe exists. But then in order, once you believe in a God, then you can then say there's an objective morality.
No, that just means he exists. That has all that scientific reason why I tell y'all, I don't care about flat earth or round earth. People say, well, that's what helps people get to God. That just gets you to that God probably created stuff. All of that stuff is not to actually believe in and follow. It's to believe he exists. Many of the scientists that watch the stars, I am betting you they believe that there's something that made that. To turn their lives over to it and follow him, never gonna happen. For many of them, never gonna happen. So yes, you can do all the inspections of science and all that stuff. Yeah, perfect. But that doesn't convince you to follow him. It just tells you that's something bigger out there. It was designed. This doesn't give him a moral code. It just tells me that he exists. Yep. Anyway.
If you don't believe in God, your position is correct. It's all just context.
I do disagree with one thing, that because there are multiple religions, right? Multiple monotheistic religions. So
thank you. Yeah.
How do you determine which monotheistic religion is true?
Perfect question. I love that question. Best question he's asked all day. Now, mind you, I'm not trying to make a case against Christianity. It might sound like that, but I'm not. But he's asking some very good questions. And I mean some earth-shattering, foundation-rattling questions. He's asking the one question that most atheists are unwilling to ask. He's doing that much. I have to give the young man his kudos for that, because his questions are some very... You got to be on your toes with this guy, because he's asking a very good question. The same question I brought up. There are multiple people that have religions that follow one God, a God. And that God does not have the same moral standard that the God has. I want to see how he answers this.
So, well, why is mine true? Because because the resurrection is the most documented, followed, and proven fact of history.
Okay, good. Again, Charlie, that wasn't the question. I really wish you would answer his question. Let me go back to the question.
Just context.
I do disagree with one thing, that because there are multiple religions, right? Multiple monotheistic religions. So how do you determine which monotheistic religion is true?
If your answer is that the resurrection happened and is documentable and proven, okay, let's go with that. That doesn't tell me why what you believe should affect me. At all. I can go down the street, encounter a man that says he has documented proof that he went to the doctor, was diagnosed with something, he left the doctor's office, walked down the street, collapsed, died. They rushed him to the hospital. He was dead for 20 minutes. They revived him. It's documentable proof that he did not fully expire from this earth, but he was technically gone, dead for 20 minutes. That's documentable. Is that enough for me to believe him? One. And two, just because he has documentation of it, what does that mean for me? Nothing. There's tons of people say, okay, so what? He rose from the dead. And so what? I mean, that's what's just written down, but how do I know that for sure? Sure. Like history's been tainted all the time. How can I know that for sure? That's an easy answer. Again, Charlie, you were convinced. Awesome. Multiple people have been convinced. I'm convinced. But that doesn't mean that that's what it would take to convince this man, or to build his entire foundation of rights and wrongs on.
So, well, why is mine true? Because because the resurrection is the most documented, followed, and proven fact of history. Of all the different things, is that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is by far the most compelling event in human history besides the creation of the world. Is that we know Jesus existed, we know that he was killed, we have extra biblical sources that prove it, from Josephus, from the Talmud, to the historians of the day. And there are so many facts surrounding the resurrection that cannot be explained other than that Jesus actually rose from the dead. From YU's female witnesses, we know that he was in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. We know that the tomb was empty. Where did Jesus' body go? For example, if you wanted...
I get all that, but you're not telling him why he should believe it. You see, again, this is part of the problem. We say stuff from a convinced position and expect our convinced position to convince everybody else. Doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. I'm sorry, it don't. You know, just because you believe it don't mean that what you believe is going to affect somebody else's belief. Each one has to be convinced in their own minds, right? Yeah. And you might give them some information to think about. Perfect. But the convincing is not on us, which is why I keep telling people I'm not here to convince nobody. God does the convincing, not me. I simply proposition a thought. So this is how I would answer this question. And of course, again, my answer would be a little too releasing for him. I would tell him, I can't. There is no way for me to tell you why my objective reality should be yours and why my objective morality should be yours. There's no way for me to convince you about that. I can tell you where mine lies. I can tell you why mine came to be. And then I can tell you, you get to believe what you want to believe after that point. That's how I would answer it. I cannot tell him you have to. If you don't, obviously, I know that if they don't, there's a spot for them. But they don't believe it. I can simply tell them, I know God. You obviously don't. But this is what I've known about him, and this is what he says about following him. And I don't follow, and you've heard me say this before, and I think it was with Nitty. I don't follow God to avoid hell. There are tons of people that follow God to avoid hell. I'm not following God because I don't want to go to hell. That is a benefit of following God. Not going to hell is like a built-in perk. But I'm not following him so that I can avoid hell. I'm following him because of what I came to know about him. I'm following him for him, to get to know him. Other people might follow God because, man, I don't want to go to hell. Man, you heard what hell's about? I'm going to go to church and I'm going to live right, but it only lasts so long. So I'm not following God into the void hell. So, I can't tell you what to do. I can show you. I can aid you. If you have questions, I can answer them from my perspective, if that's what you're asking me. But to convince you, I can't convince you. I would love for you to be mentally, emotionally, spiritually where I am when it comes to God, but you're not. So you have to get there. How do I get there? I can tell you how to get there, but how to get there is not the same as taking the steps to enter it. Tons of people know how to come to God. They don't, though. Horse to water.
That disprove Christianity, why didn't they just march through the streets with Jesus's corpse and say, nope, actually he is not risen from the dead. Here he is right now. From all these different elements, we stake all of our chips as Christians into the resurrection of Jesus Christ, amongst many other things, that the Bible is materially true every time that we do an archaeological discovery in the Middle East. The more that we discover, the more that we search in the Middle East, the more we find out that the Bible is true.
Okay, so your belief is basically based on the truth value of Christianity, basically, right? And like the fact that like you believe that your religion is true, and therefore that's where you derive your morality from, right?
Partially, yes,
Okay.
but even before that, you don't have to believe in the resurrection to believe in God.
Okay.
You can believe in God and not believe in the resurrection.
So
But
if
you
I-
asked me why I believe in
Uh-huh.
Christianity.
So, for example, Lord,
That wasn't the question, though. Actually, he asked you, what makes your religion different than everybody else's religion? He didn't ask you why you believe, which tells me you weren't listening to his question. You were listening to a version of the question to answer it your way. Maybe actually listen to the question. And I think you were so distracted with what was going on in the background at one point that his questions then became kind of background noise too. And you knew what the topic of the discussion was, and you decide to answer the topic of the discussion, not that specific question.
there are a lot of arguments, for example, the cosmological argument or teleological argument that you mentioned, which do not really do not refer to like a particular god, right? It just refers to God in general.
Correct.
So
And-
how do you derive morality from just the existence of God without associating it with a particular religion?
Aha. See? Okay. Again, the kid has some very, very good questions. And I mean some. I would have loved to have these questions. Well, I just love look, I like philosophy. I do. I'd never studied it, but it became something that just, I don't know, I gravitated to. I just like having to rifle through things. I love it. I absolutely love it. And so when this guy's asking, the questions he's asking are absolute gold questions, like really gold questions. These are the questions I want atheists to ask me. I genuinely believe he is searching, but he doesn't know it yet. I think he is searching, but does not fully get that this is God prompting him to ask certain questions. The problem is he ain't getting the answers. He's getting an answer, but he's not getting the answer, which is why he keeps asking the same question over and over. And he has not gotten the answer, which is why, if he had really gotten the answer, this is the third time in this whole dialogue he's asked the same question of Charlie. Let's go back to that question again.
Argument or teleological argument that you mentioned, which do not really do not refer to like a particular god, right? It just refers to God in general.
Correct.
Right. And that is what Charlie was answering. He took the general decision that there's something out there to mean his God, which is where other people can take the general description and mean a different God. That's what he's saying, right? So Charlie's yet to answer the actual question of why his is the right one versus others. He has not answered that yet. So maybe he will.
So
And-
how do you derive morality from just the existence of God without associating it with a particular
Any particular
religion?
religion,
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you can use reason
Mhm.
that if there is a God,
Mm-hmm.
then God would want us to live a certain way.
No. 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 Untrue. No. No, Charlie. No. You are saying that because you have encountered God. You're talking to a guy that has not. In his mind, it is not true. It's not true. Technically, there are in other religions. And just like we take things on faith, they do too. Again, listen. The convincing factor is not in what we say. No. It's not in what he says.
And which way is best, which way is most efficacious. This is not my argument for it, but this would be a more deistic morality that some of the founding fathers had, that if there is a God, well, then he probably wouldn't want us to screw up this place too much. He wouldn't.
Why would he care? First of all, let me ask, if he is a God and we're just down here, wouldn't he just be able to fix it? Say we did screw it up. Fixed. What if he understood that these people are crazy? What if that God, whoever that God is, decides, you know what, man? Hey, they're gonna be stupid all day long, and I'll just wait for them to do something even more stupid, and I'm gonna fix it. Why couldn't he be like that? What if I believe that that's what he's like? How do you think people got to the point where they think God is all love? They read, right, that God is, and they read for themselves, and it doesn't come across that way in the book, but they say that God would be this. Why would they be wrong? The answer would be, in their mind, they're right. There you go. Are they wrong? Not to them. To me, yeah. To them, no. Can I tell them they're wrong? I could. I probably would. But am I going to convince them? No. Anyway.
Want us to hurt each other, right? You can use your reason to get to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's not a perfect fit. The Christian answer is a far better one, right? And a lot of what we consider to be correct moral thinking is rooted from a belief in objective morality.
But that wasn't the question, Charlie. That literally was not the question. In fact, you did everything opposite of the question. Let's go back to the question. We are at, I want to make sure I come back to this exact marker so I don't over 10, 12. Okay, so let's go back to the question.
So you can use reason that if there is.
There are a lot of arguments, for example, the cosmological argument or teleological argument that you mentioned.
Here we go.
Which do not really do not refer to like a particular God, right? It just refers to God in general.
Correct.
In general.
So how do you derive morality from just the existence of God without associating it with a particular religion?
Yeah.
That was the question. How do you do this moral foundation you have without a religion attached to it? How? You go on to answer by attaching Christianity, which is a religion, to the. Ah! You just did the very thing the man asked you not to do. You didn't answer the question. You just did the one thing the question had the caveat to not do. How do you do it without attaching a religion? The answer is, I can't. That's the answer, Charlie. I can't. I can't. Because in my belief structure, objective reality resides and is one and the same in the execution of my religion. It really is that simple. The proof I've seen, the things I watched, all that I know led me here. And I'm fully convinced that that is right. The rest is up to you. You believe it or don't believe it. How do you get to believe it? I can tell you what I've done. I can tell you where I came from. That's the most I can do. After that, on you. Is it right? Intrinsically, straight for me, from what I've seen, yes, 100%. To you, obviously not, because you're asking the questions. Again, it's always got to be too complicated.
Yeah, so that's a great question. God, well, then he probably wouldn't rooted from a belief in objective morality.
That's fine, but like then you would have to contend with things like the problem of evil, right? Because that would be like a problem, right? Because like for example, the Christian theistic, like the God is like all good, right? But
Yes, but sorry to interrupt, but atheists have a problem of evil too.
No. Hey. Whoop. Come back to the center of the field. Don't genuflect. And this is what I do not like. Don't bring in my point of view when I'm trying to get to yours. No. This isn't about my viewpoint. This is about yours. He is asking a question about you. What if atheists got to figure out their own? That's on them. He asking you. Don't compare and contrast now. No. No. Don't compare and contrast. Please don't do that.
Do you know what the problem of evil is for the atheist?
You see, and he just flipped it and took it away from him having to explain it. That was a crummy, a very snide, snaky debate tactic right there, Charlie. That was snide and snaky. That was. I can't give you no credit for that one. Like that one, I can't give you no credit for. So, That was snaky.
They can't tell us what evil is.
that is
right?
true. Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
So we have a problem of evil, which is to explain evil. We struggle with that. Atheists have a problem with evil, which is they can't tell us what is evil.
We don't struggle with that. Listen to that answer again. Listen, this is why he did not want to answer where he saw the question was going. This is why he didn't touch on the question. This is why he cut him off. This is why he cut him off.
Evil too.
The question
is rooted from a belief in objective morality.
That's fine, but like then you would have to contend with things like the problem of evil, right? Because that would be like a problem, right? Because like for example, the Christian theistic, like the God is like all good, right?
But yes, but sorry to interrupt, but atheists have a problem of evil too.
That's why he cut it off. He cut it off because he did not want to answer that question, and he tells you why he couldn't answer the question. Coming
Do you know
up
what
here.
The problem of evil
What
is for
is
the
that?
atheists? They can't tell us what evil is.
That is
right?
true. Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
So we have a problem of evil.
They actually can tell you what evil is to them. They may not have your matching sentiment about what evil is, but what is evil to them goes against what they want. So that is evil to them. So they don't have a problem telling you what evil is. It's just different than what you think is evil by God's standard. But the reason why you don't want to answer that question is because you do want to paint them as not knowing.
Which is to explain evil. We struggle with that. Atheists have
We don't struggle with trying to explain what evil is. That's why you didn't want to do it, because you struggle with telling people what is evil. You definitely struggle with it because you cannot be frank with them about evil. For all the belief you have in God, you refuse to actually delve into the real crux of what is evil and stand on it. We don't have a problem explaining what is evil. Do you all have a problem explaining what is evil? I don't have a problem telling people what is evil. I got zero problem. I will slap you across the face 15 times with what's evil. No problem doing that. Like that is cakewalk compared to the rest of my Christian. That is cake. That is the easy part of Christianity. What? Man, come on, bruh. Come on, man. Bruh, look. What the? Come on, man. Christians should never have a problem figuring out to tell people what's evil. We have no issue telling people what's evil. Listen, the man was probably going to ask about God being all good and allowing certain things. I would just let him flesh it out. he more than likely was going to go to the whole idea of child suffering and poverty and suffering from mankind and death. And all I would have to tell him is this: from what I believe of God and what he has said, those are all side effects of our first form of disobedience. It's part of the punishment we got to live. That's part of what the earth is now because of Adam. It's that simple. It's not avoidable. It is bound for destruction. He told us all this was going to happen. None of it is unknown to us anymore. There will be evil because the present age is controlled by the devil. There you go. Again, nothing of what I just said may make sense to you, and you may not believe it, but you ask me, and here's my answer. That's why I believe him. And he is all good. Because only a good God would allow you to make all the mistakes you want and not coerce you to following him. He will not force himself and believing in him on you. That's the difference between what I believe and what most believe. But secondarily, that's why I'm not going to tell you that you have to.
Problem with evil, which is they can't tell us what is evil or good.
But that's because they don't believe in objective.
Exactly.
Right?
So, but that's a bigger problem. So they can't even use the problem of evil against us because by what definition do they consider something evil?
That they tell you it goes against what they want. That is indeed evil to them. They see God as a God who allows certain things to happen, obviously, right? So in their minds, he can't be good because in their minds, a good person would never allow, especially with that much power, would never allow something bad to happen to his own creation. What they don't get because they refuse to hand their heart over is that it is part of the situation that mankind themselves put themselves in. And that he did put a way for us to avoid many things. We just don't want it. So far, this guy hasn't had a single question answered.
They can use a problem with suffering
Yes.
because suffering is objectively measured, right? Pain or struggle. So yeah, I mean, look, the problem of evil, I don't have a great answer. I'm not going to like give an answer that no one's ever given. Evil actually, you could argue, is an absence of a good thing. Evil
You could argue?
itself does not necessarily exist. It's just the absence of good.
That is of all the things you said, that is the most objectively untrue thing. Evil is abided in one entity. You know that, right? He's spoken about in the Bible. Like evil itself is is personified. There is an entity written in the same book, Charlie, that you read all the time, that is evil embodied. Like Captain Evil himself. Do you not know what his name is? Did you forget his name?
The same way that dark is the absence of life.
Mhm.
But look, we as Christians, we have a couple things that are very hard to answer.
Technically, Charlie, dark can actually exist in the presence of light if there's something blocking it. Just saying. Just saying.
Right? Problem of evil and like why kids die. I mean, amongst many other things, right? Atheists have to explain everything else. They have to explain why we're here, how the earth was created, love, mercy, justice, forgiveness, everlasting life. And so
What do they need to explain everlasting life? They don't believe in everlasting life. Why would they need to explain that? What? An atheist would never think to defend everlasting life. In fact, that's for us to defend, not them. An atheist would never think to try to explain everlasting life, Charlie. Hey.
we do have an answer in the Christian faith that God uses all things for good for those who loves him. God works in mysterious ways is the old thing that we say. But also we also believe in original sin. But all of that actually appeals that there is a transcendent good.
No. Here's what I genuinely believe about Charlie. I believe he has a faith. And it is linked to the God. But it is a philosophical faith. He has a very philosophical faith. Like super philosophical faith.
Evil itself does not disprove God. It might question what you think of God and the nature of God, but itself does not necessarily disprove it.
To you. I've said this before. Proof requires something else. I can bring proof to you all day. That proof will mean nothing if you don't believe it. So you telling me to prove to you something will require my answer to make you believe it. If, however, you don't believe it, I have proven nothing. I've presented evidence, not proof. I gave you evidence, but if you don't take that as proof, it ain't proving nothing to you. Take, for instance, this last case, right? There was video proof that these officers beat the tar off this dude, right? Visual, video, audible proof is what we would say, that they bam, 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 kick dude, punch dude, baton dude, forced him to the ground. There was what we considered proof. No. That was evidence that they did something. It obviously was not proof to the jury. The Bible has evidence. History, evidence. There is evidence of him everywhere. Listen to what it says. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. From since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they were without excuse, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. All that evidence, they don't believe. Of all that evidence, they don't believe. I cannot convince nobody. I can give you my story. I can tell you what I know, what I believe, and it may convince you. Paul did that, and he got this answer. Almost. Almost. You've convinced me to be a Christian. Almost. Almost, but not. This was Paul he was talking to, right? The Paul himself. And this man looked at him and said, almost. Almost. Yeah. I'm not sold on that. I'm not here to convince nobody. I'm not. I'm here to tell you, and you do with it what you will. I'm here to tell you that he's waiting for you. You don't have to go to him. I'd love for you to. There's nothing in the books that says you have to. I can tell you that if you do, it'll be the best decision you've made, but it's still your decision. I can tell you what the requirements are. I can tell you what he's demanding of us, and I can tell you what he's offering you. But if you don't want it, you don't want it. You want to go through all the history books? Go through all the history books. You want to go through every book that's left out of the so-called Bible? Do that too. You want to talk to every religious head? Do that too. All on you. I'm just telling you what it took for me to be convinced, and it wasn't a whole lot of gibberish and hoopla. I commend Charlie for this, for being able to be articulate about his stance in front of people. But I think you can be trying to be too nice to people and not willing to let them go down their own in flames. He could have buried that dude forever ago by just letting him flesh out and actually answering his questions. He could have done that. He didn't do that. And as for people thinking that someone like Charlie would have someone like me on his platform, I'll tell you this now. Never going to happen. Never, never, never. I was just talking to Corey the other day. There is a reason why people don't want people like him and I on their podcast. You know why we don't get invited to big platforms, even though people know who we are? You know why? We are too dang direct. We don't beat around the bush with answers. We just give you, bam, that's the answer right there. Well, you don't like the answer? That was the question you asked, right? There's the answer. It is too direct. Like, we'll stand on business all day long. Is being gay wrong? Yes. Who's in charge? Man. They don't like that. To us, it's very simple. Too simple. And that's why we get frustrated. Like, how is this difficult for you to get it? That's why he would never have me on. It's the same reason that people like Candace Owens don't call talking to us. The same reason that Brandon Tatum don't talk to us. It's the reason why none of the big church channels they don't come and they don't ask because they don't want the answer. It is too direct, too simple. I don't have to be intelligent, super smart to answer these questions. The Bible answers them pretty direct. I don't need to worry about it. I mean, I'm sure I can get all philosophical with people. I have no problem doing that, but I don't have to. I really don't have to. I don't have to be all that. Right? He was just so matter of fact with it. Like, man, you almost got me. You got that close. Like, some of the stuff you said made sense, but nah, man, I ain't gonna be no Christian. Come on, man. Anyway, sorry it went a little longer today, but I think it's efficient for us as believers to understand that the world is not looking for us to convince them by what we say. The world will be led into wanting to hear by how we live and what you say, but they will not be convinced that way. They are convinced by the conviction of the Holy Spirit. And since I am not the Holy Spirit, I can't convince nobody. The word might be able to break open a section of them that opens up the way for the Holy Spirit to have his way, but I can't. I can't do it. Can't do it. In any case, I do have a topic Monday, and I want to make sure you guys understand that this topic Monday is not me saying that this individual is or is not the Antichrist. But we are going to be talking about the new Pope and the relevancy that I see with where he's from and what he's been saying. Okay? The relevancy of where he's from and what he's been saying. So we'll talk about him Monday. We'll talk about him Monday. If you guys don't mind, please pass this one around. Okay? And I know this might actually lose me a couple of subscriptions. I have no qualms about that. I understand that fully. That's fully expected. And I'm not mad about that at all. But I just want people to understand that this is not something I do for the likes and it's great because YouTube pays, but that's not the goal here. That might be the goal on Too Strong, though, to get paid real good. Even then we don't compromise, but that's not what this is about. Okay. We'll catch you guys. My wife will be back tomorrow, so I have to drive out to town to pick her up and stuff. So my days will get easier a little bit after Sunday. Phew, it'd be nice. I'm tired of running around. In any case, and in between time, don't forget the Savage Patriots will be on today. I haven't made up the show yet. I'm about to do that, but we will be discussing Pam Bondi and a new bombshell that might have us thinking real different about that lady. Real different. Anyhow, we'll be in touch about that later today on Savage Patriots at 6:45 Eastern. Today is the last day that will be at 6:45. Starting Monday, we're going to go back to the regular 6:30. I just need that extra 15 minutes to get across town to pick up my kids and come back. So that's why it's 15 minutes later than normal. Okay. All right. Awesome. So scrolling at the bottom, you know what to do. Love y'all. Mean it. Mean it. Mean it. Mean it. Wisdom is calling you from the streets. So please, 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 please find wisdom. Peace.
Hold tight the dreams, for if dreams die, rely on yourself in no way.